Hi, welcome to the Empowerment Timeline. My name is Monique Gomez. I'm a certified trauma and resilience life coach, former mental health clinician, and I'm here to teach you how to pull a skill from your history in a safe and amazing way that will literally turn your life around if you repetitively use the skill and keep it in the front of mind as either a regulation skill or an empowerment skill. This is typically what happens when we do what's called SafeNet. That's an abbreviation for a long term, which I'll say now is salutogenic asset focused narrative exposure therapy. Yes, I said a scary word, exposure and therapy. So, what I've done with this, well, let me explain what SafeNet is. SafeNet is a timeline experience where you go into your history, your timeline, and pull a growth event. That growth event, excuse me, that growth event has skills in it. Typically, like I said, is a regulation skills, which is like calming your brain and body, feeling safe in your brain and body, or an empowerment skill, which is just kind of like this internal knowing of who you are, how you behave, and just how powerful you are as a human being. So, with that, SafeNet was created by these amazing doctors, Dr. Robert Roten of Arizona Trauma Institute and his colleague, Dr. Logan. And I got taught this technique, treatment, therapeutic approach by them in my coaching container, as well as in a secondary education with Dr. Robert Roten himself. Why I use this continuously, why I love talking about it, is because it is transformational. It has changed the lives of my coaching clients, and I don't say that lightly. You can read the testimonials if you like. I even have a podcast where I've exemplified this work, the long version of SafeNet. Today, we're doing the short version of SafeNet. So I've adapted it to a group container so that anyone, whether you've been to therapy or haven't been to therapy, whether you've evaluated your history or not, whether you have significant events or not, this activity will work for you to bring a skill from your history, like I said, to empower you or give you like some calming tools to help you get through anything difficult or challenging that's happening in your life, which we all kind of are experiencing now, nowadays. So with that, I'm also going to share my screen to go through the outline of my presentation that I created for you guys, which is going to be really short. It's about 4 slides. And the reason I kept it short is because this is really an interactive activity. Since no one's currently in the group right now, Zoom room, maybe they've gotten lost because I probably would get lost. I'm also going to be doing this along with you when we have guests in this Zoom room. And so it's not need for participation, but the other caveat I will say is some of these things we're talking about may activate you. Activate meaning that you will feel anxious or scared or nervous or maybe even terrified. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. I don't think it will because we have quite a good, let me hit present here so we can see. Beautiful. So this is kind of my outline. Again, this is only 4 slides because I want to really sit down and do this with you and go through the worksheet that you have access to. So the timeline and intro SafeNet. So there's a couple objectives that I want to touch on before we get into the regulation skills, which obviously you can see is that second space there, because even though you're not going to really activate yourself during this experience, you want to make sure that you are calm enough and don't get spiraled into the story, quote unquote, which we'll go through when we talk about the language and the format on the next slide. I may have mixed them up, so I'll have to play around with that. But objectives. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Whatever you come up with for your skill is your skill. As long as you feel that it is truly 100% you, 100% your step that you took to get to whatever the statement is. Because again, we're making this very simple. We're starting with just a statement, and you can see my statement up there. The example that I'm bringing to you is I am brave. We'll see that in a second here once we get through some of these objectives. So we start with a statement, and we want to make sure that you are, the second point here, focusing on the action steps that was created to reframe the story, or the old stories I like to talk about with my clients, and use it for strength and not shame or guilt or blame. Because shame, guilt, and blame typically keep us stuck in our old behaviors, our old patterns. Okay. This third point here, regulating yourself, or co-regulation, right? Which we will be doing together if you're following along with me as I'm holding myself and breathing and going through this on my own sheet of paper here. So before we get started into the regulation tools, I do want to make sure you have a piece of paper handy, a journal, a notebook, scratch paper, whatever you have nearby that you can jot down this activity, because it really is pretty interactive. And so if you have questions, you can always book an introductory call with me that is $60 off session for 45 minutes. And we can either do this version or the long version, which also can be completed in 45 minutes. Okay. So if you don't get it today, if you try again and it's still not working, you're not understanding the steps, feel free to book a call with me and we can figure it out. I will drop the link in the show notes. You can also find that on my website, dtheal.org, at the Start Here button. You'll find the links for the collab calls or an introductory session. Okay, let me drink some water because I can, lots of talking. Beautiful, regulation tools. So I teach a lot of regulation tools, but today I'm just going to show you 2 items, tools. So the breath and a body-based regulation technique. The first one is breath work. So I love inhale for 7, exhale for 7 to 8. It's pretty typical. Majority of people can inhale to 7 unless you have a restricted rib cage or constricted breathing. You may be able to inhale to 3. That's totally okay. The importance about 4 to 7 breath is the long exhale. Long exhales typically tell our brain that it's safe, we're okay, we can calm down and get through this. The second breath, which you can maybe tell it's separated there with the comma, is inhale for 4, exhale for 7. Oh, sorry. Inhale for 4, hold for 7. I know it sounds like a lot. Exhale for 8. So this one can interrupt our thought patterns. That's why the holding breath is there. Holding breath can also like shift our system in our body of like rest and digest. So again, kind of almost like that distractibility component when we talk about like mindset, reframing, and tolerance of things that are uncomfortable. So we're going to practice 4, 7, just twice together. I'm going to hold my body. You're welcome to hold yours. You can also ground yourself. You can lay down, whatever feels comfortable for you. We want to get comfy today. So I'm going to close my eyes. We're going to inhale for 4. Out. Inhale. Out. Beautiful. So anytime you're noticing your body tighten up or tense up, definitely use that breath throughout this experience. You can even take a screenshot of this and save it for later. The 4, 7, 8 we'll do again twice together. Again, I'm going to grab my body just because that feels safe for me. Plant your feet if that also feels safe. And I'm going to close my eyes because I feel safe doing that because it's just me in this room. Love it. Okay. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. And I'm going to try and count on my hands. So maybe I'll not grab my body. Exhale all your air out. Inhale for 4. Hold. Out. Inhale. Hold. Out. Sometimes I cheat. Totally okay. Havening. So there's 3 havening techniques that I show. I'm sorry they're not written out on this page. Again, if you have questions, we can have an introductory call with just regulation techniques if that's something of need for you. So you want a palm to palm connection and you want to move your hands back and forth. Any speed, any tempo, any pressure. I go fast just because I'm really excited today. And then you want to also breathe with this. So I do the 4 to 7 breath here. One more breath. You can also use normal breathing, whatever feels good for you. The second evening technique is cross body. So you're going to wrap your arms across your body, grabbing your shoulders just gently, and then kind of swipe down. You can use, again, any tempo, any pressure. Last one. Beautiful. Next one I'm going to show you is touching the face. So you want to fingers or palms on the forehead, and you're going to swipe down towards the chin. I like to do this gently and slowly. It's up to you what speed or pressure you want. 2 more. Beautiful. This is better. So those are easy regulation techniques you can do anywhere. If you have any questions, again, let me know. You can email me. Sorry, I want to check, make sure no one's locked out of the Zoom room in case they're emailing me. Beautiful. Okay, so the example is I am brave. We will get to that in a few seconds here. And then how to move out of the feeling brain into thinking brain. So that is a major, like I created a formula for that. So you'll see an image of that, of kind of what we're going through today. Okay, so first some definitions. So like I mentioned already, the story or the old story are the details, what they did, how it happened. And usually I speak to a significant event here. A significant event doesn't necessarily mean it's traumatic. It could mean it's really exciting. It could mean it's really intense, right? The intensity level, whether it's positive or negative, is kind of the story, the growth event that happened to you, right? How it happened, and then any emotional components of the story. So when we are doing the SafeNet timeline, we want to remove the emotion from it when we're looking for the growth event, when we're looking for the steps or the skill. So again, here's number 2, the statement. I'm going to try and use the statement and the skill so that we're understanding and there's zero confusion. So the statement, the skill is I am brave is my example. So you're going to create your own example in this activity that we do together. Like I said, I'm going to create a new one here on my piece of paper next to me so that I'm literally doing this with you from the bottom of the race here. So this is typically an I statement, usually followed by a strongly held characteristic. Can sometimes be I can, I get to, or I choose to be. I actually was in a female women's group, entrepreneurship group, and the statement kind of starter that I gave them was, motherhood, right? Like, I am an amazing mother, right? Like, why are you an amazing mother? And so the statement was kind of long for a lot of the women, but they were able to break down how they became that way because it was a journey, right? It was growth that happened with their parenting skills, with their human skills, whatever the case may be, right? Okay, so number 3, steps. So the steps, I'm going to say, are probably the hardest part. And this is what I was talking about with getting out of the emotion brain into the thinking brain. The steps are how you do that. And that's why I'm here to support you in doing this. That's why I've given you a handout where you can really use questions that I wrote down on the handout to facilitate some thinking brain ideas of what did happen? How did I become brave, Monique? What was the first step I took, right? So curated by your words. And that's why I think words are really important. And can start with adjectives. So like brave, and I'll show you in a second to give you a specific example, but like starting with objectives, action steps, procedural, that could be universal to this story, quote unquote, that you are continuing to use. So SafeNet, like I said, going back to the original premise of SafeNet, there is a skill in your history, in a growth event. So today we're getting a statement. Instead of getting a specific growth event, we're using the statement as the growth event, if that makes sense. And we don't want to get into the whole story of how you became brave, right? Like my example, but we want to make steps so that we know what goes where. So I think I'm going to show you my example first, which is an old example, so that you can understand kind of where we're going with this. So skip over here. This is my example. And sorry, I moved the steps all around. So number one, space to be. That's the action step. And again, you see how I use adjectives with some of these: coming, finding, right? We can use adjectives to describe the step. You can make it a whole sentence. You can make it a phrase. The step is really important, but what people get stuck in is these bullet points down here of the story, right? So choosing college for a way and applying. So the whole story is I became brave leaving my mom's house to go to college because I had a little bit of an enmeshed relationship with my mother. I talk about this more in my podcast, but it's part of what built me. It's part of where my anxiety comes from, right? So a lot of my history and patterning is because of my mother and the enmeshment that happened. So leaving for college, there was a lot of fear, right? And it was intense. So freedom from mom's enmeshment. I may have spelled that wrong. Totally okay. The second step, finding my likes and dislikes. So again, this was an action step that I took, but it looks like, seeking men who only wanted sex, being promiscuous, taking risks, not just with, relationships, romantic partners, but also with like some of the classes. So I put like my linguistics class, I dropped out because I was failing it and I was really stressed out, right? Like I could go on and on about this linguistic class and how even this other class I took where I cried because I was failing, right? Like that's the emotional story component that we don't really want to dig into today. We want to only focus on this upper statement, finding the likes and dislikes, describing the step that means. Step number 3, trial and error. Beliefs didn't match my desires. I wanted honesty, chose men and friends who lie, right? And again, I'm not trying to reactivate you, just speaking of my story here, but this is what I'm talking about with like the steps that we want to look for, and then the emotional story component that we want to kind of decipher and kind of, dig through to get the action step, right? And sometimes one of these steps, like if it is an emotional component, it might look like processing my emotions, feeling my feelings, right? Sharing my feelings with my community, right? And these big words, right? The steps themselves are really generalized. You're noticing that, right? And the story is really specific. We want the steps to be generalized so that we can use the skill in different situations, not just going off to college, right? Not just trying a new, educational course, right? We want to use these skills in different facets of our life. And so this is what SafeNet is, right? So the story we want to avoid as much as possible. We want to ask the questions from the handout to really truly understand what you did, what action step you accomplished or purposeful step you made, even if you right now can't see the purpose. And sometimes it takes a little journaling. And so definitely come back to this. You don't need to get it again in one swing. It's best to do this again with some support. And that's why I love this as a group opportunity. Okay. So step number 4, coming back to me, remembering I'm in charge of my thoughts, feelings, behaviors, risk is a part of life. So this kind of story happened kind of after college, while also in college. I had like 6 years of college, but never mind. So on and so forth. Your story can elongate, right? Like I picked going away to college. That was my story that I was connecting to I Am Brave, but the story kept going, right? Like I kept building on I Am Brave even during the other college, right? My master's program, my undergraduate degree. And then even down here, step number 5, question and choice. I think I really built this skill in my entrepreneurship goals, which was, 10 years, 7 years after college. So it's really a beautiful thing. And I'm going to go back to the label here again. So there's the old story, which we want to avoid, or at least turn it into a step. So down here, the steps curated by words can start with adjectives like you saw, action steps, procedural, they can be universal to the story that you are continuing to use. Okay. And then the skill, like I said, is going to be a statement that we create together. I mean, on your own end. And then here's the abbreviated version of SafeNet that I kind of created so you understand fully what we're doing here. So like I said, we're going to make a statement. Here's my empowering statement. We're starting on this left-hand side of this image and then going over kind of the emotional brain, right? I must see past the feeling and the sense of being retriggered, right? Because when we talk about our past, it's just normal that memories come back and yucky feelings come back. So what we're going to do is tell ourselves and remind ourselves that I can focus on summarizing the story as an action step. And then we're going to tell ourselves, I can go forward using this statement and skill once we complete it. But of course, there's this red stripe here where our emotional brain kicks in. This is normal. This is a part of every human nervous system, even animal nervous system, right? Like our patterning shapes how we act. And so when we create a statement that's connected to an old story, you might want to replay the whole story about how you were hurt or how upsetting it was or how stressful it was. And, you know, you might start feeling those feelings come back to you. So we're not going to do that. We're going to say, go back here. I must see past the feeling and that sense of being retriggered. And over here, focus on summarizing the story into an action step. So this is great if you're doing this with someone, if you're doing with a trusted friend. I definitely support you doing that. It doesn't have to be with a paid coach or paid therapist. Okay. I think that's all my slides. Yes, that is all my slides. So let me stop sharing. And then I'm going to pull up the empowerment timeline handout, which I emailed to all of you. And if you don't have it, let me know. You can email me at my first name, Monique, at the letter D, the letter T, heal, HEL, .org, O-R-G. I thought I downloaded this. Let me see. Here we go. It's working now. Okay. Share the PDF, and then we're going to do this together on my handy dandy separate sheet of paper. Let me make this bigger. Beautiful. The empowerment timeline. So choose your I statement. I already kind of had one figured out, so I'm going to write mine down. And again, I'm going to share as we go through with this, and I may share some deep reflection and personal story just to help you file through your own personal story and create a step. Okay, so choose your I am statement. Pick a word or phrase that describes a characteristic you believe about yourself today. 70% or more belief. The example we already have, I am brave. And then you're going to ask yourself, is this one of the top ways I would describe myself? Is it connected to a powerful memory or moment? Did I take clear steps to become this version of myself? And then do I believe this 90 to 100%? So I brought a list of characteristic traits to help you figure this out. Hopefully they all can fit on the page. No, they cannot. Beautiful. So I'll let you read through some of those. I'm going to write mine down. I spelled it wrong. I'll scroll down here so you can see all of them. So my statement isn't on there, but I'm going to again share it with you so we can go through this together. So my statement is, I am resourceful. And so I'm going to go back to their questions here. And if you need to pause this and rewind it and go through the examples again, totally choose your own. Again, you wanted a positive characteristic, not a negative characteristic. Hence why these are all pretty amazing. Is this one of the top ways I would describe myself? Yes. Is it connected to a powerful memory or moment? So this one's a thinking question. And I'm gonna have to think on this one. Resourceful. I think my immediate thought and reaction is some of the negative characteristics that I would do to be resourceful, right? When I was younger, and if you read my book, you know some of this story already, but I would cry to get extra attention, even beyond, just feeling the feelings. Like I was over emotional to get what I wanted. But someone nowadays could see that as resourceful, right? To figure out my feelings, to understand who I am, all the things. So let me sit and think. Connected to a memory or a moment. The moment I think is more important than the memory, because again, we don't want to fall into the memory and then spiral into the old story. So the moment, so many good ones. I'm going to choose when I first started out as a therapist. So let me crash my paper off and like do some little journaling here. If you need to do this for yourself, go ahead. If you need another journal to do that, go for it. So my first year as a therapist, maybe even the first 3 months, the first 18 months were rough, I'll tell you that. But the first 3 to 6 months, I was really like newbie, a learner. I had to ask for help, which was really, really uncomfortable. I hated asking for help. And I'm wondering if that's the first step. So they had an open door policy at this office, which I really appreciated because it was really hard for Monique back then to ask for help. So maybe the open door policy was like, we're choosing, we had an amazing supervisor. So I'm like, that's out of my control, right? Though the things about the environment, like the office I'm at, the person who's my supervisor, those are things that I didn't choose. I mean, I guess I could have if I, toured all the sites and was like, no, I want to be with Becky and be in Chandler and whatever. But that didn't happen. I think the first one was knowing that I didn't know things. That sounds right. And there's different ways to say that. Knowing that I didn't know things could be like acknowledging that I'm new at this, which I think sounds better than knowing that I didn't know. So I'm going to write acknowledging that I didn't know diddly squat. That I didn't, acknowledging that I didn't know things or didn't know, right? That way we can keep it broad enough so that we can use this in different scenarios. Okay. So acknowledge I didn't know things. I am resourceful. So after that, obviously, knowing I didn't know things and then having a supportive community, because it wasn't just Becky, there was, other team leads, there's other therapists there that I can chat with who had way more experience than I did. Even some of the case managers had way more experience than I did. So I think I tried to like wiggle my way in, right? Like get to know people. But what do we want to call that? Getting to know people. I think like stepping out of my comfort zone to write some of these words down. My brain works better when I write things out. Step out comfort zone. Because I think the skill works really, really well when you are very precise with your language. Step out of comfort zone. Because I could say be around people who know, right? Like seek out people who know. That sounds more like this day and age, right? Like this era of my life. Seek out people who know, right? Because the first one is acknowledging that I didn't know or don't know. Don't, past tense. Seek out people who know. cool. I think we're getting somewhere. I'm resourceful. Acknowledging that I don't know. Seek out people who know. And the hardest step of all, asking for help. Because it's like people already know that I didn't know, So it was the help that I was seeking afterwards. Beautiful. I feel like this is the rest of the skill, but let's go back here. Step number 2. Sorry, I just kind of jumped into the skill here. Recall the moment that built it. And again, I like the word moment instead of going to the memory. The memory might activate you. Totally okay. Even just talking about the other people that I was in the clinic with really just made me feel really supported and good, right? When we can focus on not the crappy things that happened during my stressful time there, but also the support and community that I had, right? So choose a real life event, positive or challenging, that showed who you are. Keep the emotional intensity from a 2 to a 6 out of 10. So again, if you're getting activated, go back to the drawing board, go back to your I statement. Do you need to change your I statement, or do you want to keep it the same and choose a different moment that reflects resourcefulness, or obviously the word that characteristic that you chose for yourself? Hold the event in your mind and body, right? So like I had to put myself back there and like write some of the things of being a newbie, about that whole 18-month period where I felt like a newbie for 18 months, which was really frustrating. But again, I came back to these skills. Let the memory give you proof of how this trait forms. Beautiful. So I'm going to kind of show you all the steps here as we go through step number 3. Map the journey in steps until you feel complete. So I feel complete with mine, but I'm going to ask myself some of these questions because sometimes my clients go through this activity really quickly, even just with me sitting there, that they skip a step, or something happened in between 2 and 3 that I didn't acknowledge, or that I walked over because it was just like a little thing. And so that's why I like doing this in community or with another person, because you can talk the story out a little bit without getting too activated, and then say something along the lines of, was there something that happened after this, before this next step? So I would ask that question here. I don't think it's plainly labeled here in step 3, but that's a good question to ask when you feel like you're almost complete or that you are complete. So let's go through some of these questions as you develop your steps. What was the first action you took that led to this belief? I love this first bullet for the first step. What is the first action you took that led to this belief? And just like mine, like acknowledging isn't like a verb thing. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a verb, but it's like not, me going just straight into Becky's office, right? It's acknowledging something in my brain and my body. Having awareness is another word. That typically happens first, like awareness that I have a problem, awareness of where I am in life, awareness of XYZ, discomfort in XYZ. Some people actually have a feeling, right, on this first step, like I feel discomfort, and then here's what I do next, right? So if it could be a feeling, it could be acknowledging or becoming aware, it could just be an innate knowing, right? Some of my clients have used that word innate, right? It's like just internal knowing of whatever the case may be. Bullet point 2, what was the second step that confirmed it? So again, with mine, I'm resourceful, acknowledging that I don't know. Second, seek people who know. Yeah, so it confirmed it. Those people confirmed that I didn't know things. So funny. Okay, what was the purpose of taking those steps? To protect, reclaim, or create? So this bullet isn't this bullet's more reflective than step worthy bullet, if that makes sense, step creation bullet. But I like this word protect, reclaim, create, because whatever word you choose for your step, you can make it as big, as powerful, right? Or you can make it super long and descriptive, but also keeping it broad so that we can use it in different situations. Right? Okay, what's this last one say? How do these steps show that you are this trait, not just trying to be it? So again, I think with when we do this, it doesn't necessarily mean that you accomplish the step in that 3 month time, right? I wasn't resourceful after 3 months of working in this clinic and asking for help, because there's moments where I didn't ask for help. I didn't use this skill all the time when I could have or should have, right? It took me, like I said, 18 months to fully embody feeling confident in the therapeutic role that I was in at this clinic. And so with that, I want to kind of almost just scratch that last bullet point, because it doesn't make sense to me. I did have chat help me with these bullets. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the top here. Choose a statement, pick a characteristic, has to be 70+% true and connected to a moment, right? The moment is probably the hardest part. And again, we want to stay pretty regulated when we do this. Here are those images, those words again, if you want to re-choose one. And you can come back to this and do it over and over and over again. There's no prescription of how many times you can do this. People with significant histories, the researchers found, can have up to 13 to 14 skills like this one. Could be short, could be long, could be a variation of this one, right? Because in different situations, we use different tools. Okay. So keep the emotional intensity from a 2 to a 6. And again, focus on the moment. And you may, just like me, need a jot. I'll show you my page. I just kind of wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about like 6 lines there for a 3-step process. But again, I've done this before, so my emotion brain is already like, okay, how can we, where's the skill here? So mapping the journey, if you need help, let me know. I would kind of scratch this last bullet point because it doesn't make sense to me. And then I added some optional reflection here. And I love reflection questions. I think it just helps us overall. It just helps you know what you know and learn what you don't. Number 1, what did you learn about yourself with this skill? So obviously complete the skill first before you go through this. So pause and rewind if you need to rewatch me go through that. I know I talk fast and I did that really quickly just because I've been doing this for a while. So reach out if you need any support with creating your steps or your skill. How is the skill related to current circumstances or past situations? So a lot of stuff, because this even resonates right now, that I'm resourceful with food. I try to create meals, and I'm always someone who does not follow the recipe, guys. I don't know why. It's just something in my nature. I just don't like rules. I don't know. So I acknowledge that I don't know, and I look for a recipe, right, on Pinterest, on the Google, on different things. I seek people who know, right? So my partner's a great reference. My mom, she cooks really well. Does she measure things? No, but I can at least get the step by step. My Nana has great recipes. My cousin has great recipes I can ask for. Lots of family friends also have like recipes they've sent me. So, and then reaching out to them, obviously, number 3, asking for help. And I've had to do this multiple ways, right? Even when I botch something, I'm still going back and asking for help. Like, hey, I use this and maybe I measured it wrong. What do you think? Right? So that's going back and asking for help. So even if the skills aren't sequential, and maybe sometimes you have to go backwards and do one of these steps over again to learn or relearn something, that's still a skill. That is still you being resourceful, or me being resourceful, right? Or you being that skill. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Trying to maintain the language here. So that's what this third question is. It says, what steps still need some more practice? And I could say asking for help is still something I practice every day, every week, especially as a business owner, especially as someone who seeks help from my tax person, someone who seeks help from people who are better at math, who are better at marketing, right? Everything. So asking for help is crucial for me to continue to repeat to do. Which steps do you sometimes skip and why? I would say step number 1, right? When you acknowledge and are aware of something, it's kind of easy just to skip over it. The example I can give for this, what steps to skip and why? So acknowledging that I don't know. In massage, I've been a massage therapist for 14, 15 years actually. And I feel really confident, so confident that I don't always acknowledge that there's still lots of things and new research, right? New methods that I don't know. And so instead of acknowledging that, I just kind of automate, right? And I do what I do until I seek out step number two, people who know, someone who knows that new technique, someone who's certified in that, right? Okay. That is SafeNet, the empowerment timeline in an abbreviated version. Again, if you have questions, I'm going to link, I think I can put it in the chat box here. And then if you're watching the recording, you should be able to access this link. I'm actually just going to send you to the starting page, which has all the links once I can get there. So on my website, ddhere.org, there's a start here button. And I'm going to copy paste that in the chat. I believe you have access to the chat. And so you can book a call. You can see the other resources I have that are free, as well as my podcast, I believe, is also one of those links where you can listen to some of these definitions. You can also hear the long version of SafeNet, which I do with my friend Amanda. Gracious friend. She made an amazing skill from her history, and we got kind of deep, which was really beautiful to share with the audience. So if you have any questions, again, DM me. I'm here as always. Thank you for watching.